Well, good afternoon. If you'd take your seats, we'd like to get started and try and keep on schedule as best as possible. We have thank you for your support of the AI Symposium. We have a great session coming up with the use of AI in the field of UAS and public safety. So we have with us today, we've been hit a little bit by the weather bug. We had a panelist of 3, but we have a die-hard showing of 1. We have with us Matt Sloane of Skyfire AI. And Matt was a founding partner of Skyfire, and he is the Chief Strategy Officer. And Matt's company uses drones, particularly in the field of public safety and emergency response. And we're so grateful that Matt could join us today, because as you hear about the way that they're using drones to enhance our safety, Space Camp is benefiting because we actually have an area set aside on our campus that when Matt is engaging, training local first responders, EMTs, and sheriff's personnel, if the stars align, our students that are in Space Camp and Aviation Challenge will be able to observe that training and kind of make that immediate connection to using a technology in a career field. So I'm going to turn the microphone over to someone who's in a much better position to talk about this. This is Matt Sloane. Step on Matt.
Well, thank you, Dr. Taylor, for the kind intro, and nice to see all of you. So today, as Kay said, I'm missing a few of my co-panelists here, but I will do my best for you. Our Chief Technology Officer is stuck in a foot of snow up in the Northeast, and so you got me instead. And I can answer several questions about 2 layers deep on AI, and if we go any deeper than that, I will be happy to give you his email address since he didn't get to come today. So, but to give you a little bit of background on Skyfire and on myself, we are public safety drone experts. I founded the company 12 years ago. I was a producer at CNN for about 15 years before that, and I was asked to give a speech to some public safety, public information officer trainees about how CNN covered major news stories. And the day before I gave that talk, I had purchased a drone because I was doing a story about people who were doing triathlons, and I needed a way to film video of them out swimming in the ocean. And so I bought a drone, and back then we were, duct taping GoPros to these things. Somebody came up to me afterward and they said, "Hey, how do I get this for my fire department?" And I said, "You know what? I have no idea, but I'm going to figure it out and get back to you." So I started the company the next day. That was 12 and a half years ago now. Since then, we've worked with over 1,000 public safety agencies across the country. Everybody from a 6-person police department in Idaho all the way up to the Customs and Border Patrol, FBI, Secret Service, all of the branches of the military, except Space Force. We haven't done that one yet. We help these agencies get this technology incorporated into their everyday practice. And our main goal is to allow them to go home safely at night. And that is what makes me get up every morning and do this work. We, as a company, did a whole bunch of in-person training, and during the COVID years, it got real thin on in-person anything. And so, we spent a lot of time really thinking through what the next iteration of drones would be. And just a year and a half ago, our company was acquired by a fledgling but venture-backed AI startup, and together we are now Skyfire AI. And are building some really incredible tools to change the way that people interact with drones. So what I wanted to do first is kind of explain to you the concept that we are primarily working in, and that's a concept called DFR, or drones as a first responder. And so to kind of, this is sort of like the old way of doing things, still a very effective way to do it, but This would be what's known as a patrol-based program. And so if you have a public safety agency, and frankly, 95% of those 1,000 agencies are still doing things this way. So, they'll put a drone in a police car or a fire truck and they'll drive it to a scene. And, it takes them 5 to 7 minutes to get there. Once they get there, they have to make sure that the scene is secure. And then, oh, by the way, they're also busy being cops and firefighters. And so we're saying, hey, I know you don't have enough people to fight this fire already, but we need one of you to come over here and fly this drone. That's the downside. The upside is you get incredible data. So things like thermal imaging data about, where the hotspots are in the fire, or if it's a law enforcement call, a suspect goes running off into the woods, as they often do. You have that extra tool in the toolbox. Downsides of this, as I said, about a 5 to 7 minute response time. If you think about a jurisdiction the size of Huntsville or any bigger city, the amount of drones that you would have to have in the right places at the right times with people who could fly them, with batteries that worked and cameras that worked, it doesn't get used nearly as often as it could as an effective tool. And so back in 2018, there was a concept invented in Chula Vista, California, with the police department there. We were fortunate enough to be part of that concept as it was being developed, and that's called drone as a first responder. So the difference here is, instead of putting the drone in the police car and driving it to a scene, you're actually pre-positioning the drone on a rooftop, and it's being flown directly to the call. The drone can typically go 2 miles in every direction, so you can go 2 miles to the north, 2 miles to the south, east, and west. So that gives you a 16 square mile coverage area. You don't need to drive it to the scene, so that saves you quite a bit of time. And you really only need to have one dedicated person to that drone rather than having one in every sector inside a response area. So you need fewer trained pilots, you need fewer aircraft, and your response times are somewhere on average 2 to 4 minutes. So one of the analogies that I like to use is, if you think about the idea of cardiac arrest. If your heart, God forbid, somebody's heart were to stop right now, you would have about 5 minutes to get a defibrillator on that person and initiate CPR. After 5 minutes, your chances of survival go down to under 10%. If you think about the fact that the average EMS response time is about 3 to 5 minutes, well, in most cases, it's actually more like 5 to 7 minutes. It's really, really difficult to get a defibrillator to somebody's side in under 5 minutes. And that's exactly why buildings all over the country have put defibrillators inside the building. They make a big public education campaign about, here's the AED, it's right next to the fire extinguisher, you can go grab it. And the idea is to cut that time down to get a defibrillator to somebody. But if you also think about the fact that the 5th most common place to have a cardiac arrest is actually on a golf course. And so you're 5 to 7 minutes at least from the clubhouse if you call immediately. We also have things like allergic reactions on playgrounds where it can be hard to get to a medical kit. We have drug overdoses, becoming an epidemic in this country. And so we're also looking at things, in addition to the police department uses of this, looking at ways to put defibrillators, EpiPens, Narcan, trauma kits, and all that kind of stuff on a drone as well, too. So this is the model, the drone first responder model. The way it works is you have some type of remote operations center. That's me. This is actually here in Huntsville Police Department in their operations center. So we have somebody who is watching the 911 calls as they come in, and then launching the drone to those calls. Whoops. Sorry, I'm checking with him on something here. And so remote operations, in the remote operations center, then you have some type of rooftop deployment, so it's some type of drone in a box solution. And then once the drone launches and goes to that call, then you have a real-time data stream. So we can tell all of the officers or the fire rescue personnel as they're going in, here's what you're walking into. Good example of this is a call that we ran outside of Atlanta. We got a call that there was a woman who was unconscious in the parking lot of a Little Caesars. We got the drone there in 60 seconds, and we found out not only was she not unconscious, she was eating pizza, and there was pepperoni on the pizza. So it's a silly example, but it illustrates perfectly how in 60 seconds we were able to cancel police, fire, and EMS. And when most departments around the country are resource limited, typically about 30% understaffed, not because they don't have the budget, but because there just aren't people who want to do the job anymore. And so this is where something like that can help. Give you an example. This is something that happened here in Huntsville. This is a video from the police department. This fine gentleman was involved in a domestic violence dispute. The officer came in the front door, and this guy took off running. He was running through the woods here for about 5 to 7 minutes, thinking he was doing a great job getting away. And then about 7 minutes later, he took a break. Like, he sat under a tree and caught his breath, and then he came out, and right on the other side, he got tased the second he walked out of the woods. So I'm sure he was wondering how the heck we found him, but this is something that happens on the regular here in Huntsville. This is another one right up here in the right hand, well, actually down here in the center, you can see this suspect who is trying to hide from police officers. This is in a junkyard, and there's a big fence there in the middle, and you can actually see him kind of slinking around because these are all police officers, and he doesn't want them to figure out where he is. What he doesn't know is that they have a drone overhead, and they're actually just planning the best way that they're going to come in and smoke him out. But it's kind of fun to watch him kind of sneaking around there. So what we're going to do now is we're actually going to see this live. So that's why I'm checking my phone up here. So we're going to go over here to, whoops. This is the drone that's sitting on top of the police department right now. We've got our handy PlayStation 5 controller here. And depending on, hopefully our internet connection is going to be solid here. I wonder, let's yeah, it's probably a firewall issue here. So let's do that real quick. Let's try that one more time. Best laid plans. All right, well, this was going to be super cool. Let's give it one more second here. Any thoughts, Bruce? Let's see. No, I could actually. This works great, but I think when you're on a public network, maybe that could be the issue. But let's see here. Yeah. Oh, yeah, that's a good point. So yeah, I'm not sure why. Let's see.
It's just testing your ability to improv.
That's okay. I can tap dance. Let's see here. Back online. Let's try that one more time. All right, well, I promise you this is really cool when it works.
Second interaction is it if you go control it.
Are you sure you're not going to the NDA network?
Yeah, let's see where, yeah. Let's try one more time here. All right, we can come back to this part. I wonder if it's on Ben's end too. It should be connecting, right? All right. All right, we'll come back to that. All right, well, anyway. It looks like this when you're doing it. So we'll play this video one more time. Yeah, we do. Yeah, so it's perfectly clear daylight camera. Obviously, this one was at like 8 o'clock at night, so we're using thermal imagery to see him there. So to kind of give you an idea of, to kind of give you an idea of how successful these programs are, this is the data from Chula Vista. I actually pulled this data just this morning, so they update it real time. You can see that from since October 23rd, 2018, when they first launched the program, they've done 24,143 responses. They have assisted in 3,956 arrests because the drone was there. So it was directly attributable to the drone being there. And so that's reasons like they had a gun and they threw it out the window of a car while they were fleeing, and we knew exactly where to go find the gun. There's another classic case there of, there was a domestic dispute, and this guy takes off on his motorcycle, and his girlfriend takes off after him in her car, and the drone actually sees her hit him on the motorcycle, which they wouldn't have otherwise seen because the scene was moving, and the officer, the drone was there before the officer. This is one of the most interesting statistics, I think, is that DFR actually avoided sending a patrol unit 4,582 times. And so if you think about that resource limitation, being able to clear these calls without sending a drone, we typically think of, drone response and public safety as like, oh, we get all the big stuff, right? So like the shootings and the stabbings and the domestic violence, but it also really helps tremendously with the, hey, somebody left a door unlocked, can you go check it? Abandoned vehicle, and reports like that, which what we call calls for service. And those are the things that take 15, 20 minutes to get an officer to, and they could be busy doing other things that are much more important. So that's a really important one. And then, of course, the average time on scene, which is 96 seconds. So if you've ever called 911, I can guarantee you that nobody showed up within 96 seconds, but this is the first in resource that's on scene incredibly quickly. Looking specifically at our Huntsville program, we operate here from the public safety building. We have a 2-mile ring that we can fly from there. We're only operating, this is last year's data, so we only operated last year Monday through Friday, 3 to 11 p.m. We're now operational on the weekends. But just in that 1-year period, we did 4,475 flights with the Drone First Responder program. We flew over 10,000 miles that year. Average launch to on-scene time is 2 minutes and 26 seconds. And then 48% of the time we were on scene before the first in patrol unit, which is pretty remarkable. Most importantly, we had 196 apprehensions that were directly attributed to the drone being overhead. So, yeah. Mm-hmm. It is, yeah. Well, so not in Huntsville. So, yeah, most of the time it's a docking station where the drone actually lands itself and charges and then goes back up. In Huntsville, we have one launch location, and the reason is because we're still in a pilot program here. And so the goal is to be able to spread this out into 5 more locations across the city. So that's the bad news. The good news is that if you look at this data from one location, one shift, we still did almost 4,500 flights. And so that's one drone. Yeah. Go ahead.
How do you have interference with personal?
Less than you would think. Our big concern, and look, I mean, we have customers all over the country who are doing this. Our big concern here in Huntsville is helicopters. Obviously, the Arsenal, and then, of course, the medical helicopters that are in and out. One of the challenges that we face regularly is, most aircraft, particularly in controlled airspace, have to have a transponder. The Army helicopters oftentimes don't turn theirs on. That was one of the big factors in the crash at DCA. The medical helicopters do have ADS-B on, but they are also coming in and landing at the hospital, which is less than 2 miles from the public safety complex. So it's definitely something that we spend a lot of time thinking about how to deconflict with aircraft. So
with the arsenal being so close, because it is a no-fly zone within certain areas around that arsenal, are you ever going to be able to get to the Madison area because it's so close to the arsenal?
yeah, actually, the only no-fly zone is directly over the arsenal. So there is controlled airspace that extends out past that, but we have all the FAA permissions and stuff that we need. And in fact, our office is at Huntsville International Airport. So we have the ability to fly even at the airport. There's just different notification procedures and things like that. So yeah, it's part of the work of doing this implementation is the FAA back and forth, and that changes on a somewhat regular basis. It's gotten more and more permissive as time goes on, and the processes have gotten, I don't want to say easier, but there's definitely more of a formula now. Before it was spray and pray and hope that they said yes. It's gotten a lot more formulaic. So the guy who's in charge of all that is sitting in the front row here, and I told him I would embarrass him at least once during this conversation. So finishing up on the Huntsville data, 18% of the time we could have resolved the call without any officer involvement here in Huntsville. The police department has made the decision right now that we are not going to cancel resources, but we should track when we could have canceled resources, again, because this is in a pilot phase. So eventually we will get to a place where we can say, drone's been there, saw what they needed to see, or saw that there was nothing there, and we can officially not send an officer to that. So that's all well and good. And it's been working well. As I said, we're doing it here in Huntsville. We've got several other cities that we're working with, starting that up. In fact, we're recently we were awarded the contract to work on a statewide DFR deployment in Ohio. And so, we have a lot of people sort of doing this across the country. And this sort of concept of operations works really well today. But what if we had those 5 locations and we were resource limited with the number of pilots that we were able to deploy? What if we had 10 cities trying to do this at the same time? Or in the case of Ohio, there's going to be 8 different cities that are operating simultaneously. What if we had 10,000 locations to launch from? And this is actually a reality. We're working with a Fortune 5 company that is very interested in supporting DFR launch across the country in over 10,000 locations. So what do we do then? Because right now, both the FAA and just the workload requires us to have 1 drone to 1 operator. But if we get to a place where we're actually doing this in 10,000 different locations, there aren't enough drone pilots across all the shifts where we would be able to support all that. So that's where we get into AI-enhanced drone operations. So one of the things, obviously, this conference is all about AI, so all of you have heard plenty about it. But there's a couple of things that happen with AI in public safety, very similar to AI in healthcare, which is that we are working in resource-constrained environments, right? So when all of us first started using ChatGPT, and we had plenty of time to play around with it, and it told us that the president had 17 fingers, or that there was, I don't know if anybody has asked ChatGPT 4.2 how many R's there are in the word strawberry, but if you haven't, I highly recommend doing it. My wife saw a TikTok about it, and then she started trying to do it, and she got so frustrated because the agent was 100% convinced that there was only 1 R in the word strawberry. So if you haven't done, switch back to 4.2 on ChatGPT and just ask it how many R's are in strawberry. But we can't afford to do that when we're working in public safety because we have to be right 100% of the time. And until we are right 100% of the time, we can't use automation, or we can't use AI until we know with at least 99.9% certainty. So a couple of challenges. We're working in a fast-paced environment, so the agent has to be able to understand our intent with very minimal input. I can't spend 5 minutes crafting the appropriate prompt to make sure that I get the right answer. I'm running fast. Sometimes I'm racing to a scene or whatever. So I have to be able to give it my intention with minimal input. It has to be able to return actionable results with minimal extras. So if you've ever asked an AI agent for an explanation of something, and the explanation is 17 pages long with the little M dashes all over it, when you've got an officer in the field trying to make a decision quickly, they don't have time to read all that. So one of the biggest things that we're working on is, we're using publicly available large language models, but when they return, the work is on actually crafting the answer to make sure that we get only what we need and not all of the other stuff, as helpful as that can be in other contexts. Accuracy is 100% critical for us, as we talked about. We're also dealing with flight, and so we have to make sure that if we're using an agent to affect what a drone does, that it's going to make sure that it's done safely. And so this has been a big challenge across the drone industry. Every drone company, every drone software is saying, hey, we're putting AI in place, but we cannot have the AI make a decision that's going to cause the drone to fall out of the sky or hit an airplane or fly into a building or something like that. And then the other thing is that we have a goal in mind. So we have to get somewhere, we have to affect something, we have to do something. There has to be a goal in mind, and we're not just having this conversation for academic purposes. So we are using in our AI software as we build it out as a stacked agent approach. So the joke about my superpower when I was a producer at CNN was Matt's always got a guy. So you need a truck here, or you need to get somebody there, or you need a camera guy there. Like Matt's always got a guy. So this is my guy. And then my guy's got all his guys, or gal. But his guys we got a weather guy. So we have an agent that particularly, all that agent is responsible for is monitoring the weather. We have another agent that's monitoring the airspace. So to your point about flying around the arsenal, what classification of airspace am I in? Is it legal for me to be flying here? Because the last thing I want is for an agent to say, all right, send the drone over here, and then all of a sudden, the FAA is calling or the Arsenal's calling and going, hey, why'd you fly a drone? Oh, it wasn't me, it was my AI agent. I'm so sorry. Air traffic, so that's where I can fly, but the air traffic piece of it is what other aircraft are in the air, what other deconflictions do I need to make. Radio traffic, so that could be airspace radio traffic, aviation radio traffic, or it could also be public safety radio traffic, scene awareness. The scene awareness one is particularly interesting because we are asking the drone to not only do certain things, but we are asking it to make interpretations. And so when the scene awareness guy gets on scene, that agent is looking at data from the cameras. So that could be the electro-optical camera, the thermal camera. We're looking at directional awareness. And so, there are plenty of agents that deal with fixed-based cameras, but these cameras are moving in 3 dimensions. They're also, they could be, moving along a path. They could be changing directions. And so the agent has to understand which direction the drone is pointing. And so I can say, go up, and it has to know what I mean by saying up. So directional awareness, context clues. What can you tell me about what's around the stuff that I'm looking for? Prior incidents is interesting. So, if this is a house that we've gone to 15 times, what prior data do we have that, can inform our decision making? Map overlays are very critical. And so we can start to ask questions like, if that suspect that you saw in the earlier video goes and runs out, where is the closest school? And how fast will he get there at average human running speed, right? If he can get to that school within 5 minutes, do I need to lock that school down? Do I need to put roadblocks in place? Those are not things that the AI agent's gonna do, but it is something that my officers in the field or my pilots behind the desk are saying, I need to know that answer. And so instead of saying, oh, okay, all right, that's 4 blocks from Grissom High School, so like if he goes that way and then he crosses over it, so maybe I need to, I don't know, what do you guys think? Should we, so we can automate all of that stuff using the agent. Understanding where the best ingress and egress routes are, where the staging areas, and then things like critical infrastructure, power lines, highways, traffic, all of those are important, both from an operational and tactical approach, but also from a legal and regulatory approach. So I certainly don't want my drone flying down 565, because if it falls onto the highway, it's going to cause a pileup, and people can get hurt. And so, our human pilots are making those decisions all the time. When we are actually flying over a call, if it's an accident on the side of 565, they will manually take the drone off of 565 and look back at it, so that if the drone were to fall, it falls into a stand of trees instead of falling into an active lane of traffic. And so I know that my human pilots can do that, but we need to make sure that our AI pilots can do that as well. It's important to point out the difference between automation and AI-driven autonomy. A lot of drone AI software right now is focused on automation, right? So I can, in fact, the one I was about to show you that was going to be super awesome is basically an automation, right? I could type an address in and hit go, and the drone will know, okay, here I am and here that address is, and all I have to do is follow the path of least resistance, and I'm going to fly directly to that point. That's automation, right? It's running a predetermined set of actions. It's unaware of the scene around it. And so the drone might be flying there and a Black Hawk might come across its path and it has no way of knowing that. It's unaware of the scene. It also requires hard coding. And so the software that I was going to fly on is a piece of software that we don't make. It's part of the sort of the response chain that's commoditized. And so we use somebody else's software instead of reinventing that wheel. But every time we ask them for a feature change, it's a 6-week sprint. So we've got to code in, and they've got hundreds of us asking for these changes. So they've got to code in that change. Using the agent-based autonomy that we're using, it's taking into account things like its perception. Obviously, perception is a loaded word when you're talking about an AI agent, but what's happening around it, what's happening with the weather, what's happening with the airspace. It has the ability to reason based on a set of rules that I've given it. So a quick example of this is when I first started talking to the agent, I said, is it a good day to fly a drone in Huntsville? And it said, I think so. It's bright and sunny, so have at it. And I said, the next time you answer that question, I need you to take into account the fact that to be able to fly legally, we need to have cloud ceilings above 1,000 feet and visibility of more than 3 statute miles. A cloud ceiling is defined as broken or overcast. And so when I ask for a ceiling, it's, it only relates to those 2 topics. And then, I have to be in uncontrolled airspace. Here's a library where you can find, uncontrolled versus controlled airspace. And much to my surprise, because as I said at the very beginning, I'm not an AI data scientist, I'm a journalist, so I don't know anything about this stuff. But I was able to get it to give me a better answer based on the inputs that I gave it. And so, we're building this product for certainly our operators to fly it, but also for every police officer and every firefighter and emergency manager that uses it to be able to just give it real language inputs and have it give them the right answer. So I went back and I said, okay, now knowing what you know, is it a good day to fly in Huntsville? And it said, yes, it's a good day to fly in Huntsville because the cloud ceiling is above 1,000 feet and visibility is greater than 3 nautical miles. So I was very proud of myself. Our CTO, who is a PhD and spent 15 years at DARPA, thought I was, they were like, oh, good job, buddy. Like, way to go. But it's pretty cool, and that is exactly the point, which is I'm the end user, right? So I need to be able to make those changes. It's learning from previous actions, so it knows what I told it in that particular instance. It also understands, the last time that it took that route, there was a 364-foot tall Saturn V rocket in the way, so maybe don't go that way again. And there's no hard coding. So these are changes that we can make as we're flying, and making sure and having guardrails in place that it's not going to cause anything negative. So some of the critical challenges that we're facing, it has to be fast. So, we have a drone in the air, there's a finite amount of battery, we're responding to a 911 call, it's an emergency situation. Can't sit around and wait 5 minutes for it to figure out an answer, so it's got to be fast. It also has to be right. We can't have it hallucinate, we can't have it give us incorrect information. God help us if we ever ask it how many R's are in strawberry, it's going to be a problem. It also has to be legal. So, we have a certain set of laws that we use, and regulations that we use on the aviation side. There's also a separate set of laws that we use, for protecting civil rights and making sure that we're not infringing on people's rights. It also can't create work. And so we hear this all the time from our public safety clients, like, this can't be one more thing that I have to worry about, right? And so we've designed our agent with that in mind. I don't want you to have to open up a separate screen and log in and give it a whole bunch of information. It just needs to know who you are. And so we're doing a lot of work on it's not public yet, but doing a lot of work on the user interface to make sure that it's easy to use. Everything is natural language. So we actually have some really cool patents around using natural language to interface with flight. And that's all in service of making sure that it's not extra work for our end users. A human has to be in the loop to execute and oversee for 2 reasons, well, more than 2 reasons, but the 2 most important reasons are, as we talked about before, civil rights, making sure that those are not being infringed upon, and also because of FAA regulations. And so right now, the FAA requires that a drone is flown by a human. Autonomous flight is not permitted. Semi-autonomous flight is permitted, so if I say, go to this address, it can do that, but I'm overseeing it. That will change, and in fact, in some of the new drone regulations that are coming out, there's actually a preference for autonomy over human-controlled flight, but we're still 2 years away from that. And then I don't know if it's the biggest one, but it's certainly one of the most important is public perception, right? So, this picture that I had in the beginning with this drone hovering over a city, very, doom and gloom, ominous. We can't be Skynet. We can't be perceived to be Skynet. When we got acquired, we were making a joke that we should change the name to Skyfire Networks and we could use Skynet for short, but nobody thought it was funny. So, but there is a perception that that's what we're doing, right? And so we make it very clear when we're doing one of these programs that this is another tool in the toolbox. We are only responding to 911 calls. So you have called us asking for help. This is a tool that we use to respond for help. I hear this time and time and time again. And as I said, we're working with 9 new departments in Ohio. Nobody's flying around looking for who's growing weed in their backyard. We don't care, right? That's not the point. The point is I'm trying to get there fast so I can see if somebody's life is in danger. And frankly, once I get there and once I've made that determination and once the officers get there to support it, the drone goes home. That's it. So we are very clear that what it is doing and more importantly, what it isn't doing. People have this belief that these drones have the ability to see through the walls in your houses, Predator style, and see where you are in your house. That's not a thing. Maybe the CIA has that or something, but we don't. So it's important to be clear what we are not doing as much as it is to be clear about what we are doing. All right, so hopefully this second demo is gonna work. But let me actually show you the agent here. The other one's still trying to work. It's really trying hard too. I'm gonna be so mad. Let's see. All right. There we go. All right, it's working. Okay. So a couple of things before I show you this tool. This is not even a beta version. This is an alpha version. This is so it's in testing right now. When I was given this tool, again, our CTO was going to be here to show it all to you. So I'm going to do my best impression of him. He said, "Don't this is not polished. Don't expect a lot." And honestly, I was blown away by what I saw. So let's. Take a look here. So what I'm going to do is I'm pulling up this video. Now, the way that he does this demo, he doesn't look at the video first. I'm going to show you the video first because I think it's going to help inform the way that we ask it questions. So this is these are video clips that have been preloaded into this demo experience. The goal is eventually that this will all be live, and it actually works live now too, but I'm really glad we didn't go with a live demo because it went so great the first time. So these are preloaded videos, but the questions that I'm asking it I'm making them up as we go along. So you guys can throw me questions at some point, we'll ask it too. So just take a look at the video. I'm not gonna tell you what's in the video. Importantly, for those of you who are data scientists at heart, there is no metadata in this video at all. So the agent doesn't have any details about where the video was shot or when it was shot or what time of day or any of that. Just a pure video. All right. So you all saw the video. And now we're going to say, what do you see in this video? And hopefully this will be fast enough with the connection here, but let's see. All right, so first thing I wanted to point out is that this is too much information, right? So as we have identified, we need to make it better than this. But for the purposes of this, so from 0 to 21 seconds, we see an evening scene on a busy pedestrian shopping street in a city. We see brightly lit storefronts and malls with large signs. On the right side, there's a construction wall. Further ahead, there's a multi-story building. The street itself is wide and paved and closed to vehicles. And we see street lamps and numerous neon and LED signs illuminate the scene. What if we wanted to know, do you have any idea where this was shot? All right, appears to be in China on a major pedestrian shopping street. All the billboards are in Chinese. The construction boarding on the right is marked MIFC, Modern International Finance Center. International fashion brands like H&M and Forever 21 match what you'd find on a big commercial pedestrian street. The banners hanging from the lamps contain Chinese political imagery. I can't pinpoint the exact city street, but this is very likely a central shopping district in a large mainland city, perhaps Beijing, Tianjin, or a similar metropolis. All right, so let's ask it like, I don't know, I'm curious what that, does anybody speak Mandarin? Anybody know what that? Yeah, oh yeah, all right, you caught that, yeah, so, yeah. But, what's that? How many people are in the video? There are too many people entering to reliably count each individual, but they're already on the order of 80 to 120 visible pedestrians, and the composition keeps changing as the drone moves, so I can't give you a precise count, only that it depicts a crowd of well over 100 pedestrians. Let's ask it, do you see anyone with a backpack? So you can imagine lots of reasons we would want to know that from a law enforcement standpoint. There are several people with a backpack. So around between 9 and 10 seconds on the left side of the street near the storefront, there's a person walking towards the camera, and they appear to be wearing a dark backpack. All right, let's see. So between 9 and 10 seconds. All right, with your, as one of my co-founders says, with your Mark I eyeball, can you find somebody with a backpack? Because I sure can't. So they said, the agent says, lower left side of the screen near the storefront, a person walking towards the camera appears to be wearing a dark backpack. All right, let's see. See if we can zoom in here. Yeah, it looks like she's facing away, but I see a woman with a backpack there. So, and there was a second one too. Let's see what it said. Around 15 to 17 seconds near the lower center left, small backpack. So let's see. I think it's that person. Yeah. Yeah, so the point is, I never would have seen that with the naked eye. And so this is starting to give me data about what is in this imagery. Now, again, imagine we're doing this on a live video that's coming in. And so our SVP of public safety was a special agent at the FBI for 22 years, and he actually built the drone program for the FBI. But before that, he was a surveillance pilot. And so when he saw this demo, he said, so wait a minute, you mean to tell me I spent 5,000 hours in an FBI airplane making circles around counterterrorism targets, and I could have just said, hey, let me know if the guy with the backpack walks out of the door? And he's like, yeah, and not only could you have done that, but it would have sent you a text message when it did it too. So I was like, he's like, all right, I give up. So let me show you one other example. Oh, go ahead. Oh, okay. Any other questions you want to ask it? I can't guarantee that it'll be able to answer everyone, but. All right, let's take a look at large crowd. There we go. So I'm not going to play the video. I think you can get an idea of what's going on here. What do you see in this? You can tell that's a question I ask it a lot. Now, also keep in mind, this is I think like a 27-second video. This doesn't care how long the video is, right? It takes a few extra seconds to chug the data, but there's a video in here that's almost an hour long too that'll do the same thing. So we see a dense crowd of hundreds of people filling the intersection around a central monument. People are scattered around the landscape island. Numerous parked and slow-moving vehicles occupy a parking lot. Event staff are marshals in high visibility vests. Urban neighborhood with brick buildings and a church and red roofs. overall, it's a peaceful-looking mass gathering. I was actually going to ask it if it looked like it was a peaceful gathering, but it already gave me that answer. Let's see. Do you see any red cars in the video? Already know the answer to that, but let's see if it does. Multiple red cars visible, especially in the parking lot on the left side of the scene. So of course I saw those with my own eyes. Do you know where this video was shot? Binghamton, New York. And it knows that because it read the sign on the billboard that said Sigliotti's Driving School with a local phone number, and the layout of the roundabout and the church with the red roof and adjacent brick buildings. So while I can't be 100% certain from the footage alone, the visible businesses and streetscapes strongly suggest that it was shot in Binghamton, New York. This blew my mind when I asked it that because it has no metadata. So I could understand if it had, data in the back end that said, this was shot at this latitude and longitude or whatever. But the fact that purely from visual cues alone, it was able to identify where this was pretty amazing. I do want to ask it that question about, can you estimate the size of the crowd? All right, so roughly 25 to 30 people per 10 by 10 area. 10 to 12 such blocks, so around 400 to 600 people with about 500 as the central but still approximate figure. So, okay, not exact number, but still pretty good. I do want to ask it, I've never done this on this video, but let's try it. Do you know how high the drone was when this video was shot? All right, suggests that it's on the order of 150 to 250 feet. And so that's great, but show your work, right? So how did you get there? The central monument appears roughly similar in height to a 3 to 4 story building. Structures are typically around 35 to 55 feet. We're clearly looking down onto the tops of the monument, so it actually walks you through the process, which I thought was pretty cool. Any other questions you want to ask this agent? All right, let's look at one other one. There we go. Oh, not, sure. City traffic, there we go. No, that's not the right one either. Oh, there we go. All right, so this is just somewhat static video. Well, I guess it is moving a little bit. Okay, so can you tell where this video was shot? Atlanta, Georgia, specifically the Buckhead district, and it tells you exactly how it figured that out.
What time of day was it shot?
Great.
Time
What time of day?
Like I want to go if we can get close to like is it a certain time based on the sun coming in?
Likely around midday to early afternoon. The sun is high in the sky. Building shadows are short and fall mostly downward rather than strongly to one side. Road shadows from light poles and overpass beams are compact. So yeah, here's one that I actually asked it. Let's see if it works. Can you tell what time of year?
I was wondering about that on the other one.
So, I think what's really incredible about this, okay, yeah, so many trees are bare and only lightly budding, no full green canopy yet, which rules out late spring or fall. A few trees show early leaf out. So, I mean, incredible amounts of detail. Now, that's too much detail, right, for an officer who's trying to make a decision quickly. But it's guessing around February to early March, which is pretty cool. So, I mean, if you think about the crimes, oh yeah, sorry, go ahead.
I just have a question. The technology seems like it should have this ability. I don't know. But are there not something like this where you can drop in or feed in multiple videos and say there's a bad guy in one location and he's obscured when he's running away, but then another CCTV captures them?
Yeah, so actually, that's exactly what I was about to say, which is, so where this, so no, not really, that doesn't exist. Bits and pieces of that exist. What's really exciting to me is, this was obviously built as a tool to be used with drones. I think it's equally exciting to see how it could be used with ground cameras and a series of ground cameras. And so where we fly these drones from is actually in what's known as a real-time crime center. And real-time crime center, the mission of a real-time crime center is to aggregate all of that camera data from cameras that are all over the city, and body cams and car cams and DOT cams and all that kind of stuff. And so, yeah, absolutely. And that's the first thing I said to our chief technology officer was, hey, this is super cool that you can do this on drones, but like, how about ground cameras? And he goes, well, the best part about ground cameras is you always know which direction they're pointing, right? So it's actually less work to use that to aggregate. So I can ask it, I mean, obviously this is not a close-up video, but I can say, let's say a 911 call says, I'm looking for somebody that's in, a white T-shirt and blue jeans. I can ask it, hey, look across these series of cameras and show me everything between 11 a.m. and 11:05 a.m. where you see somebody in a white T-shirt and blue jeans, and it can do that as well too. So it's this is a sort of very specific example, but yeah, the technology is usable across multiple video clips as well. The other one, let me just do one more here. What direction is the drone flying? And again, without any metadata. So where this becomes super useful is, we get lost all the time. We lose situational awareness when we're sitting here with a PlayStation controller and flying a drone. I have no idea. They're like, oh, go east down Triana or whatever. I'm like, I don't know which way's east. Like, is this the right way? And then no, the other way. Okay. All right, I lost my internet. No, because I'm not using the agent. What I'm saying, we're moving from human piloted to this AI assisted. And so we were actually talking about this at lunch beforehand is, I need to know, okay, the subject, what I can tell you from being a drone pilot is the guy went that way, but I have no idea how to tell you which way that way is unless I know where I am and where the drone's looking. And so I'll be able to ask this agent, which way did that guy go off running? And it's going to say, oh, he ran to the northeast. He took, Highway 72, or he took whatever. And so we actually have the ability to interact with the map as well as the video, and then relay that data much more quickly. So just to kind of wrap this up a little bit. So you see what we're working on. We're very excited about it. So where do we go from here? So as I said, our biggest challenge right now is both from a regulatory and from a technology standpoint, how do we go from one operator to one drone to one operator to many drones? Because there is going to come a day where the FAA is going to allow it. They're already starting to in a few ways. But once that becomes a real reality, things are going to escalate very quickly. How do we move from direct human control to human oversight? How do we move to multi-ship operations? And so they typically call that swarm. I tend to avoid that term because it's terrifying. But in our application, we call it multi-ship operations. And it's not, traditional swarm, like if you've ever seen a drone light show, that is, there's a leader and the rest of them just follow the leader, or they're pre-positioned, as pixels in a picture. You start here, then you go here, then you go here, but they can't change it in flight. It's all pre-programmed. And so that's follow the leader. Ours is more divide and conquer. So if you are going in to do a search and rescue and you've got 1,000 acres to cover, instead of having one drone cover 1,000 acres, you could have 10 drones, each covering 100 acres, all at the same time, collecting all that data, and then having the ability to interface with it and ask it questions. And then deeper integration with the hardware OEMs. And so we don't make a drone, so we work with several of the drone manufacturers and are looking at ways to put a lot of this compute power on the edge. And so we actually, the way that we approach that is that we have an agent who selects which other agents to put on the drone so that that compute can happen at the edge. Because as you can see, trying to push all this data over an internet connection, depending on where you are, can be challenging. So those are all the things that we're working on fine-tuning on the integration. And with that, I will take any questions that we didn't already answer.
I'll ask a question.
Yes.
For the autonomous flight, do you think that, like the FAA approved UTMs for UAS traffic management?
Yep.
That's fairly mature ATAC plugins
Yeah.
to get you to autonomous?
Yeah, so both of those things. So I could bore you to death with FAA regulatory stuff, but I don't have enough time, and I'll put the rest of you to sleep. Yeah, so right now, the UTM systems are nice in theory, and some of them are fairly well baked, but they aren't live and they aren't reliable in most places right now. And so this is actually part of the integration work we're doing in Ohio. Is the whole point of developing 8 separate drone first responder programs in the state is to feed all that data into the state's UTM system. And so we can start understanding where everybody is and deconflicting. Right now, it's not all that complicated because we don't yet have air taxis and package delivery in most places, but it's coming. And when it does, we need to have really good UTM systems in place. So there are plenty of good UTM systems. They're just not in place in most places, and they're not required or mandated in any way. That is going to change when the Part 108 regulations come out, and right now we're in a federal rulemaking process for that. And because it is autonomy first and then human operation as a backup versus the other way around, that rule actually implemented a new part of the law called Part 146 that is going to require what are known as automated data service providers, ADSPs, and that'll be a whole separate category of companies that doesn't yet exist. So yeah, all of that's coming. ATAC integration is something that everybody's working on. The military and various federal agencies are religious about ATAC, and so a lot of these companies and ours as well are working on ATAC integration. Any other questions? Yeah, we got one over there.
Hi, so you said we are already doing work with the HPD around here in Huntsville. Are there any conversations with Huntsville Fire? And I'm curious to know a little bit more about the applications that you have for the fire service and medical response as opposed to police.
Yeah.
And then another question add on to that.
Yeah.
Just knowing this area and knowing that there is a no-fly zone over Redstone Arsenal, but I also know that there are government contractors that work in targeting and taking down drones locally, and they have that technology on their rooftops. So not that they're taking them down, but they are tracking them and are well aware of them.
Yeah.
So I'm also curious to know if you're running into issues around the Research Park area as well.
Well, let me add one more layer to that, which is that the counter UAS school for the FBI is now based here in Huntsville. And so if we weren't already being tracked by enough sources, now the FBI is doing it too. And so a quick funny story about that is that the first class, so the basic backstory is that only the FBI had the ability to take down drones in the continental US. DOD can do it over DOD facilities, Department of Energy over nuclear facilities. But they just passed legislation that delegates that down to the state and locals as long as they come through the FBI's school, which is the same way we do bomb techs and everything, which is why things are always blowing up around here. And so that they just had the first class for that school. The cities where World Cup is happening this summer, all of them are getting to go through the class first. But I actually got to go to the class for a little while because we work closely with the Bureau. And they had a 5-mile wide flight restriction up over John Hunt Park when they were doing all that testing. And despite the fact that they all know us personally and they know that we fly drones all day, every day, forgot to tell us about that. So we called them and we're like, hey guys, what's up with that? They're like, don't worry, it's just for drones. I'm like, yeah, that's what we're flying, not worried about airplanes, So yeah, so that is definitely something to be aware of. They're not mitigating drones, except in that case, they were in John Hunt Park. So we're aware of it. We're in regular contact with the flight authority at the Arsenal. We don't fly DFR over Research Park, so we haven't run into it yet, but Huntsville Police has drones in their vehicles as well, so I'm sure that they do run into it. As far as the fire rescue applications, DFR really got started in the law enforcement space, and it has not really taken off as much in the fire rescue space, primarily because of grant funding. That's really the biggest reason. The AFG grant that most fire departments use to buy everything specifically excludes drones. And so it hasn't taken off, no pun intended, in the fire service as quickly as it has with some of the DHS grants that are in law enforcement. But all of that said, and I'm more than happy to talk to you about this, not in public on stage, but the client that we are working with is in the healthcare space, and so they're the ones that are very interested in the defibrillators and all that kind of stuff. So there is work going on there. There are a few places around the country where the fire department and the police department are working together on a DFR program. As you probably are aware, they typically don't get along great. So they don't want to help each other out in a lot of places. That's not really the case here in Huntsville. HPD and Huntsville Fire Rescue do talk about their drone programs. They don't share them necessarily. But there have been conversations around, hey, how can we support Huntsville Fire Rescue with the DFR? And I will tell you that I've personally flown to a couple of fires, here in Huntsville, and so police typically get dispatched to the fires anyway, and so we are doing responses for fires, but we would like there to be a better throughput of information when we are on a scene. We'd like the fire commanders to have that data as well as the police commanders. So, do you work for Huntsville Fire? Yeah, okay. Well, yeah, let them know that. Okay. Yeah, they have a drone program. It's not nearly as active as the police departments, but yeah, I mean, there's no reason they couldn't work together. So, Brian?
I was just curious too, like, have you guys thought about supplementary or secondary data collection as a part of what you do?
Yep.
Things like monitoring traffic patterns, like police coming to scene efficiency, helping with navigate. That's what the other thing is, LiDAR mapping of the city.
Yeah, I mean, for anybody who didn't hear the question, is there other data that we could be collecting and aggregating while we're doing these other things? And the answer is yes, we have absolutely talked about it. One of the challenges is that the battery life is already so limited on these drones that adding more sensors on them, which adds weight, will reduce battery life even more. But I think we are for anybody who's keeping score, the FCC announced in December that we were banning all foreign drones. And so everybody in the industry was like, okay, like we knew you were coming for the Chinese drones. We didn't know you were trying to ban all of the foreign drones, like Canada and Israel and Ukraine and India. And anyway, so that's all being sorted out right now, and all of our heads are spinning a little bit. Yeah. You're like,
Notice like the manufacturer of like all of that drones?
oh, no, not drugs, drones.
Oh.
Yeah, these guys. Yeah. We're banning drugs dropped from drones. No, wait, that's already illegal. So, foreign drones. And so we're all still trying to figure out what that means because it just happened a month ago. But all that to say, there are some really, really innovative companies that are going to come out of this. And so it's for national security reasons, which I don't disagree with. The approach may be a little bit, but what it's going to do is there's a forced scarcity now as far as hardware in the drone space, and so you're going to see a lot of companies coming out with new aircraft and new equipment in the next 18 months here in the U.S. Right now, there's lots of drone companies, but the ones that are active in public safety, there's like 3, and so we need more, right? PDW here in Huntsville, great example, amazing company. They're building drones for the military. We need them to build drones for public safety and commercial and all that kind of stuff as well. Not just PDW, but I use that as an example. So I think all that to say, when we have drones that are capable of carrying more sensors, absolutely we should be collecting that data. We are doing it in some little ways right now, but there's tremendous value in that that's not being captured yet. So, anybody else?
So from what I've seen of your presentation, y'all tend to focus very much on city-based applications. Is there any plans to expanding it to more rural applications as well?
Yeah.
Coming from a wife that used to dispatch for different counties,
Yeah.
The police manning issue is very severe in some of our counties, and your wait times are obviously a lot longer.
Yeah.
How do y'all plan on trying to address that? Obviously, you already spoke about the battery lifespan is an issue. Are y'all pursuing any type of technologies like solar powering to help with the charging during flight, not just after? Other types of applications like that.
Yeah, no, I mean, you're absolutely right. So the issue is much worse in rural areas. So we recognize that. But you're also right about the fact that battery life is the problem. And not so much even battery life as it is where to position the drones, because of battery life, they only have a certain endurance. So we can typically fly, maybe I would say maximum sort of out and back, probably 3 to 4 miles. And so trying to figure out in a rural area where you would put that box so that you could, cover enough of that territory. It's an interesting question that we've been thinking a lot about recently because of this Ohio statewide project. And a lot of Ohio, like a lot of most states, is fairly rural. And so we had 106 agencies apply to be part of this grant program. There's 8 slots, 9 actually, but out of those 106, like half of them were rural. And so it's, we I think maybe, we haven't announced the winners yet, but I think maybe there's 1 or 2 in there that are rural. And the challenge really is like, okay, this is great, but as we're losing access to inexpensive Chinese drones and now going to be buying very expensive American-made drones, and you're going to need more of them to cover rural areas, that leaves a real gap. And so there's a couple of options. One is hydrogen, and there are a couple of hydrogen drone manufacturers. They're expensive, and the hydrogen supply chain is difficult to get a hold of. The second one would be gas-powered, and I think we're going to see a lot more gas hybrid options. We do see that right now in the agriculture drone space because they're carrying heavy payloads of like crop spraying stuff. The challenge there is that the rules actually limit drones to under 55 pounds right now. And when you start adding fuel and spray stuff, that gets over 55 pretty quick. Also changing in the new regulations, so we're going to get there. The last piece of that puzzle would be VTOL hybrids, vertical takeoff and landing hybrids. They have wings, and so they can generate lift, and so they get a lot more endurance for the same amount of battery. And the challenge with VTOL hybrids right now is they're horribly expensive, and they don't have a lot of box deployment setups. And so we'll get there, but we're just not there yet. So.
This is a bit of a more technical question.
Uh-oh.
But I was kind of curious with that AI model that evaluated the video data, how much of that was done in-house and how much was like hyper-tuned with y'all's own personal data and like how y'all did that?
Yeah, it's again, I can answer that at a high level, but yeah, it's a combination of, publicly available large language models and some in-house training that we've done. What's been interesting, because I asked that same question to our CTO, and what's really interesting is, he said, as a small company who, we're just in a venture funding round right now, which is awesome, but we want to tackle the hardest problem first, and so we started with the large language models, and then we're refining from there, primarily because a lot of the work is not in, it wouldn't have known that Sigliotti's driving school was in Binghamton, New York, if we weren't using large language models. But at the same time, so there's a lot of prompt engineering that goes into it and all that kind of stuff. But it's actually, response engineering is even more important because, like I said earlier, I'm worried that it's not going to give us the right data in the shortest amount of time. And so that's where we're focusing a lot of our efforts. There will be specific things, like we do a lot of thermal imaging, and it's harder to use publicly available training data against thermal imaging as it is just regular daylight. So it's a combination of both, and if there are any follow-up questions, I can't answer them, but I'd be happy to put you in touch with the CTO, and he can definitely do that. So, yeah.
Hi, Matt. You've mentioned that there's like a single aircraft at a base, and current laws say that they have to have one man, one drone.
Yeah.
And you've also talked about how there are mobile units where there's a drone inside a vehicle.
Yeah.
Can those mobile units be networked into the main base? And so, like in a rural environment, you have basically a person driving a mobile hangar. they
Yeah.
set up the drone and then grant someone else access?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a concept known as patrol-led DFR. And so that would be where a patrol unit drives a drone to a scene and then says, all right, I'm here, take it off. And that is definitely doable. The challenge there is finding a drone that's small enough, or a box that's small enough to put in a vehicle. So the thought is, communications is the other challenge. So that drone has to be LTE enabled for us to be able to fly it when it's not connected to a base station. And so there are a few of the drone OEMs that do that, but not all of them. But it's definitely getting there. So yeah, it's been thought of. It's being worked on. There's a few departments that are doing it, but it's not all that common just yet. Any others?
We got time for maybe one more short question.
Awesome. Oh, go for it.
Preferred LLM?
I believe they're working with Gemini right now, but I have to confirm that. I know they were working with the OpenAI models, but I'll double check. Interestingly, one of the reasons that they moved away from the OpenAI models is because it was trying too hard to please us. And it was like, no, I want the answer. I want the right answer. I don't care about my feelings around it. So yeah, I thought that was kind of interesting, but cool. Well, thank you all very much. Appreciate it.